Hello, folks. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody joining in. Hey, Heather. Thanks for jumping on. Right. I think we're all set. So without further ado, let me do the honors. Here with us, Mark Ross Smith. Mark, I didn't even realize your last name was hyphenated Ross Smith, so I learned that just 2 days ago. Welcome. Mark is CEO of Loyalty Status Company and creator of Status Match. Did I get that correct?
Creative the modern status match, we call it. Yes.
All right, modernstatusmatch.com. So, Mark, thank you so much for giving us the time and welcome to this rather informal session where you get to chit chat with a bunch of points people. And we'll get to that and we'll talk a little bit about loyalty, what loyalty even means in 2025, and where Status Match fits into that entire ecosystem. So, thank you again and welcome.
No, it was great to be here. Just before I start, quickly on status match. So status
Yeah.
match as a concept has been around for like 40 years. It's not a new thing. Yeah. The
We,
first.
I said it. I've said it. So now it's your thing. We just roll with that. You are the
Okay.
creator of Status Match. You
Well,
get to keep that.
I'll take some claim there. The first status match I heard of was 1986 because we did all the researchers to try and figure out like how long has this actually been going on, right? So
Right.
1986, the first one was a guy. He was flying United. He sent a fax into American Airlines with some boarding passes, and he's like, hey, can you give me some benefits if I start flying you instead?
Hmm.
So that's kind of the first unofficial match that they didn't really have status back then, that we sort of know
Nice.
about. And, since then, obviously, airlines, hotel, everyone knows what status match is now. We just kind
Hmm.
of reinvented it. So if you,
We.
um, if you remember, like the old airline tickets, the paper ones.
When you said faxing boarding passes, I was literally thinking that the carbon copies and it'll get onto your finger. The color would get onto your finger. Just awful.
Yep, exactly. So I say that's like the old status match, right? The equivalent of the ink sort of paper tickets, and we've sort of brought it to like electronic ticketing. That's the equivalent sort of thing in terms of status match. So we sort of, I want to say, reinvented that. But in 2020, actually, we launched the
Huh.
first sort of reinvented one with it was November 2020 with Frontier Airlines.
Right.
Um, that was the first one, and it was obviously the worst time in history to have a travel tech company. And Frontier Airlines wanted to make a bunch of money, like every airline did. So we launched the world's first paid status match.
Hmm.
We paid at the time it was a $49 fee to apply, and it was all tiers. Anyone could do it, and it was extremely popular. People were like, "You're charging me to apply for a status match?" Because there was all this, you know, it should be free, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm the most valuable person in the world. How dare you not give me something for free, right?
Yeah.
But a fee was very on brand for Frontier. It worked out extremely well. They got more people on a paid match than they could get themselves on a free match.
Hmm.
Obviously, people then
So,
have a sense of buying, and it went really well. Anyway,
but before that, that's a great historical tidbit. Well, historical, it was only 5 years ago, but still. Uh, what was happening before that? Before that, airlines were just trying to run these status match promotions in-house. Is that what was happening? Or largely still happens, I would say.
yeah, like I got biggest competitors. Everyone's trying to do it themselves, and some do a not too bad job at it.
Hmm.
Hotels as well.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so a bit of backstory. Like rewind about 7 years ago, I was running loyalty at Malaysia Airlines, and I ran their first ever status match promotion,
Hmm.
2018, I think this was, and um, and it was a disaster. we It was a total mess. It was a challenge we ran. So it was come register, do I think it was two or four segments, and we'd keep the status for the remainder of the year, kind of thing. And what happened is people were just sending us emails, and
Sure.
suddenly we're getting a couple of hundred a day, a couple hundred emails a day, and I assigned one of the ladies in the team to look after the status match things. Like this is your job for the next month while we run this thing. So she's kind of manning the inbox, right?
Yeah.
Replying to emails. I remember the day after we launched it, I'm sitting at my desk. It's like 9 a.m. She comes over and says, I can't handle this. There's too many emails. I can't do this and my actual job, right? Like there's too much workload here. And I'm like, it's okay. Like I'll help you. Like, what do you need? And some of the questions people are sending in were like that they took time to really respond to. Like you had to think about things like, can I do this? Does this qualify? And we'd realized we'd not really thought through all the intricacies of a match, all the things that people actually care about, right? It's things like if I, redeem my AA miles for a Malaysia Airlines flight, does that then count if I do this? And do the code shares count? Like all these little things. And you typically not thinking about these things when you're running an airline program, right? You're kind of top level, like let's just do this cool thing. It sounds good. You guys figure out the detail and run with it. Anyway, so we had a lot of issues. I had a lot of issues with like fraud. People, well, I
Of
say fraud.
course.
We call it illegitimate. It's like people trying to Photoshop stuff.
Hmm.
Yes, I have Singapore Airlines PPS Solitaire. Yes, I really have 50 million miles in my account. Please believe me. So there's a ton of that, and the process was slow. So what we
Mm.
discovered, if you've got status with an airline, you're a frequent flyer, presumably, and that means you're booking a trip every other week, probably. You're spending more than almost you're in the top. If you got status, you're in the top 5% of commercial travelers globally, and so you spend more, you fly more, you're doing all the right activity here, and these people have expectations. Like
Mhm.
airline, when you get status, airlines tell you you're one of their most important customers, right? You now get priority check-in, priority boarding, free seats, free back. Like stuff is free now. You're one of our best customers. And so think that mentality, and then you're doing a status match to try and get equivalent somewhere else, right? And suddenly this airline you're matching to ignores you for 3 weeks and says, we'll
Sure.
let you know, right? This is a terrible customer experience. And so we discovered speed is a big thing. So having transparency in a process around a status match application, telling people where they're at, like what's happening, when they can expect to get it. Communicating is a big thing. We did not do that at Malaysia Airlines at the time. It's kind of you send an email in, it went to a black hole for 3 weeks.
Hey, that's the kind of promotions I like, with lots of loopholes where I can just squeal my way in and then be expected to be treated like a superstar by the airline. No, doesn't work that way anymore.
Isn't that how everyone should be treated? Yeah. Everyone's a superstar. Ignore the guy that's spending $200,000 a year on flights. Like you're far more important. Obviously, you've got the credit
Oh,
card
hey,
now.
have you seen my comments on Flyer Talk? Are you kidding me?
There's a degree of entitlement. I get it. I get it because I was like that. Like when I started my whole journey in
Sure.
this,
Yeah.
I've been on my Flight Talk account is registered early 2003. So I'm more than 20 years on there. I got a few thousand posts. I've been to Fly Talk dues. I've done all this stuff. I've been there. I'll just quick 30 seconds of my background. So
Yeah, I was going to say, can you rewind a little bit more because you've given us, at least given me, so much to think about. How did you even get into Malaysian Airlines? What's your academic background? Was this like a curated thing that you wanted to work for an airline, or just happenstance? And then that became the genesis to Status Match and your own company. Tell us a bit about sort of that lead up from your younger days into Malaysian Airlines.
good question. So um, I started what called frequent flying about 2002, 2003. I was how old was I then? Very early 20s. Um, showing my age now. And I was traveling mostly for work. I had my own company at the time, and I was just visiting clients, media agencies in Australia
Mhm.
mostly. And so I eventually, I think I got silver status with Qantas from that. I was so excited, like silver, like that's like their first tier, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
I've made it in life now. I can retire. I've got silver. I can select an exit row when I fly. Yippee. Um, And sort of I had a business there and sort of did a ton of flying, ton international. I ended up being one of their first Platinum One members, which is like their kind of like their concierge key
Hmm.
type level. Um, and as you know, as part of that, you start meeting management at the airline. They kind of want to know you, who you are, what you're doing, and you start seeing the other side of the industry. You start seeing the B2B side and the how they actually do things, how they think about things, the decision making process, and you realize how little you actually know. Like as a frequent flyer, you sing that for the first time, you're like, fuck, I thought I knew how this worked. I've got no effing idea at all. Um, got a lot of experience from the consumer perspective, which is really
Hmm.
important. But this whole other world over here is just so vastly different. They're so separated, right? Because you think if you work an airline, you you're not paying, you're probably not paying for flights. You're on cheap
Right.
tickets, right? You don't need the co-brand credit card. Why do you need miles? You get cheap
Mm.
tickets, right? So you're not even in that ecosystem. You don't care about status. You're just happy to get on a plane, right? You're
Right.
paying $100 to go across to London and business, whatever it is, right? So this is huge. You're not a customer of your own product. You're not going to the airline's website, going through the booking
I
flow.
never thought of it that way. You're so right. Yeah.
You don't hit up for insurance products. Do you want to add a bag for an extra $50? Do you want to all the sort of nonsense they try to sell you, which is almost entirely irrelevant. Just side note, I booked a United Airlines flight the other day. I'm Star Gold through Singapore. I live in Asia, Singapore Airlines.
Hmm.
I'm booking this United flight. It was a first class ticket, and they're like, "Do you want to buy lounge access for $75?" I'm like, "Hang on a second. I get it's included. Like, let's start there." And you know it's included. This is not my like. This is my I don't know 100th flight on United in the last few years. Like, it's not like you don't know me, right? So
Right.
you got these really big airlines with unlimited resources still trying to sell me something they know I get for free. Like I get why they're doing it, but it's like if you were a customer owned product, like they would have thought through that process a little bit more and how do we change things slightly depending on what people enter. So my point to this is a big disconnect between these two worlds. And the way that airlines typically try to bridge that is surveys, customer
Mhm.
feedback, focus groups. Hey, what do you think? Hey, let's read Flyer Talk and see what they're thinking. Not to say that every airline employee is disconnected because they're not. There's a lot of really smart people out there that really get it.
No, but to
Um,
your point, you could be the smartest kid out there, but as soon as you're sort of absorbed into that airline culture where you're not doing that typical travel that um, a family of four is going on once a year, that kind of travel, as soon as you get disconnected from that, it's very difficult to keep your, I mean, keep your, you know, keep a sense of that pulse in the market or what's really happening on the ground. So yeah, and surveys and focus groups only can give you so much unless you're really then we get into this data game and realize what customers are doing and at what point they're jumping off or being convinced to purchase something that you're trying to sell.
yeah, I think focus is it's a waste of time, in my
Hmm.
opinion. When I was at Malaysia Airlines, the main office was at the time right next to the airport. So it's very, very convenient. That's actually how I got home. I went to the airport and then took the train from the airport because the airport's an hour away from anything, right? So every day I book to and from the airport. Like I've got my little badge on. I can go anywhere I want. Like all the VIP, all the security, immigration, no issues. And I used to hang around there because I'm a total nerd on this stuff, like everyone else is, right? So I like airports. I ended up, just hang around, just talking to people. There'd be times I'd set up all the business meetings in to be in the airline lounge in the airport. So when people would fly in to meet us, it's like, well, just don't stay, just book a turnaround, and we'll just have a meeting in the lounge, right? I'll take you to the first class lounge, right?
Of course.
Let's go there. So that worked out for everyone. They could just fly in, fly out, and they felt obligated to fly Malaysia Airlines. So it's like we make some money out of tickets, great. They save on hotel costs, good for them. They get a meeting with, at an easy thing. I got to have a free lunch in the first class lounge as part of my meeting. So everyone wins in this scenario, you see. And that doing a lot of that over and over, you start to just talk to people when they're in that environment, and you've kind of got to read between the lines sometimes. People say they want the big ones. we want more award seats. Right now, how an airline interprets that is exactly literally as you say. We want more seats, right? What you really mean is I want more seats at the flat rate pricing is 35,000 miles in business class. That's what you really mean, but
Hmm.
that's not how they hear it. They hear it is you want to be able to book any seat on any flight, and they go, wow, we've got this thing called a cash plus miles little slider, dynamic redemption, unlimited seats.
Hey, it's
So
don't
you can see the disconnect there.
stop rubbing it in. I don't know if you've read what happened with Aeroplan's recent announcement. So, as of 4 hours ago, they just shared with us that March 25th, a whole bunch of airlines under Aeroplan are now going to be dynamic, including United, Emirates, Etihad, and a bunch of regional airlines in Canada are all going dynamic pricing. So,
Oh, interesting.
everything that you're saying is literally how things have panned out, where they have heard us by saying, "Oh, you just want a seat anytime you want to fly," but they left out that part where we wanted to fly on a fixed redemption. So dynamic all across the board, at least for the select group of airlines right now. And we are just seeing that dynamic pricing is now a thing in North America. Pretty much every airline is running a dynamic thing. Um, you, so
This
you, is this a microcosm of just the bottom line, or is our conversation simplifying it too much by saying that this is simply a disconnect from what the consumer wants versus what the airline cares about?
there's a little bit of both here. So you got to look at what airlines are facing today, right? Um, High demand for premium cabins, mostly a global thing.
Hmm.
And that's reflected in some of the pricing you see, especially in business or first class, like cash pricing. From some markets is like anything to or from Australia. Cash pricing in a premium cabin is pretty effing expensive right now versus what it
Yeah.
was like pre-COVID kind of stuff, right? Um, so they've got this really high demand. There's more and more miles being created into the ecosystem than ever before, right? So you've got this like crazy amount of miles that can't possibly ever be redeemed for seats.
Hmm.
Hence, they bring in other options. You redeem for frying
Yeah.
pans and rice cookers and all sorts of nonsense, right? Hence
Hmm.
that. Um, so I moved to this is interesting, the Canada thing. Um, I'll tell you a secret. The cash plus miles, the dynamic redemption is not equal. So when most, including myself, before some things happen, I used to think it was like it's just like a slider. It's like a mile is worth a cent,
Right.
whatever it is. Right? It's just a flat rate, normal amount. For a lot of airlines, this is true, but not every airline.
Hmm.
So, for example, Malaysia Airlines, good example. Etihad, good example. The cash plus mile slider that they use, the value of your mile depends on what flight you're booking. So it depends on the origin of the destination, the cabin you're in, obviously the price of the actual cash ticket that it's being offset against. Because if there's flights they really want to sell, like the airline needs help on some particular routes, or they just launched something, the value of the mile might be slightly higher. They can tweak it up a little bit. So instead of like a cent a mile, you might be getting like 1.8 cents a mile. And the thing is, it's not transparent. You don't know. You just see
Right.
you just see it's like a slider or what, however they're working it. And you just go, you look at it and go, well, I know how every other airline does it. Therefore, it's terrible value. I'm not even going to think about it. But like, for example, last year, I already, telling this the wrong group. I already 800,000 Etihad miles for me and my family, four of us. I have two kids, for a trip to Europe, business class. Right,
Hmm.
that's 800,000 plus cash. I know you're all thinking you're an idiot, Mark. Like you could have got much better value.
Not quite in those words, but I am thinking the latter, which is value. But continue.
Second half, so I can read between the lines in the chat here. Uh, but the thing is, right, I got a little bit over a cent in value on that. The thing is, though, I got access to any seat I wanted to. So I could fly on exactly the days that I wanted to. And with kids, this is an issue because you've got school holidays to deal with, right?
Hmm.
So I perfectly aligned in the holiday break there. I got exactly the cities I wanted to. I got exactly the exact stopover in Abu Dhabi that I wanted like a 4 day thing there. I wanted this day and exactly the flights I wanted. So it was absolutely perfect. Whereas looking for like an award seat, like the typical inventory restricted seat, I'd be at the mercy of whatever they would show me, which, let's face it, I'm not going to get the seats I want, right? Or
Hmm.
I'd be booking a year out and even then taking a gamble. Yeah.
Right.
And so I got the seats I wanted. Yes, I pay a little bit more for it in terms of miles. But also those seats earn miles as well. So Etihad has, because it's considered a
Yes.
cash,
Yes. You're
right?
right. You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I earn miles on that. And so I had platinum status with them at the time. So my earning rate was higher than normal. And then, they do family pooling. So now I'm earning 4 times the miles back again. So I got about 100,000 miles back. So really the net cost was about 700 plus a bit of cash, plus any ticket I wanted. And then God forbid anything goes wrong, I'm not on an award ticket, I'm on a cash ticket.
Hmm.
Like if you're on a award, like a normal kind of award ticket, you're considered very low value at custody. Like you're one of the first to get bumped on that flight. If anything
Of
happens,
course. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
look at you, they go, because you got to think airline logic here, right? You've redeemed, I'm making up 50,000 miles for your flight. In their mind, they see it as like $500,
Sure.
right?
Hmm.
And let's just say this is a business class flight across the Atlantic. I don't know how many miles it costs, but let's just say that's what it is.
Yeah.
They look at you and they go, they got this guy here, $500 in business class. Like, how much is everyone else paying for that ticket? Like, oh, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Like, guess who's first to get?
Hmm.
Your
Hmm.
status might save you in that circumstance, depending. Um, but yeah, you're first to see the door.
Yeah, and I think that is happening across the board, and a lot of people within this community and otherwise have experienced that downgrading uh, phenomena. And when it happens, it's not the best. But then, yeah, when you sit down and sort of really crunch the numbers with a scenario that you just explained, it makes total sense as to why you are the chosen one to get downgraded in that scenario. And yeah, in your example of that Etihad flight that you took and the dynamic pricing that you paid for, you essentially are the high value customer because you are willing to pay, if not fully more cash, but at least a combination of cash and points, more points than normal. Uh, so I mean, we've fast forwarded from tracking your journey into Malaysian Airlines to now talking Etihad redemption and such. But since we are on that topic, what defines a high value customer to an airline in 2025? Because you've spoken about flushing the market with more and more of these points, which economics 101 tells us that if you print more money, if you print more currency, inflation is just going to happen. That's just a given. And that's exactly what's happening here. Every airline, it's just printing their points and doling it out in the market through credit cards, through every other means of purchase or expense that you can make. So now people are flush, or the market, quote unquote, the market is flush with points, and now suddenly we are seeing these dynamic pricing models come through. So is that just par for course and we should take it as is? Or is there a tweaking that needs to happen from the airline in terms of how they define who a high value customer is? Because you can't be both, right? You can't tell me that, hey, we value Mark more because he's willing to pay more points and sometimes more cash, but may not be flying with us all the time as much as an Anshul who has 4 credit cards from my airline, who is taking Uber only because can earn aeroplan points, is going to a liquor store, to a specific liquor store because he can earn more aeroplan points. It can be both. So, what is the airline's view in 2025 of a high value customer?
So this is the whole frequent spender versus frequent flyer thing.
Hmm.
Just awesome. I think I put my microphone a bit closer. Hopefully that helps a bit. Uh, okay, so two things to consider. One is North America is flush with airline miles, right? It's
Hmm.
very different North America to the rest of the world, right? Mostly driven by interchange and how the banks work there. Yeah. So airlines could be making, I'm making the number up, 2 cents a mile kind of thing from credit cards in the USA, right? Whereas there's no way in hell in Asia anyone's getting 2 cents a mile. Yeah. So
Right.
there's a vastly different economics there. Um, I, I'll start with the end in mind here of where I think airlines are going. If you're earning your miles from credit cards, what's happening is when that mile hits the airline, that they at that point, that's when they get cash in the door, right? That's when the bank pays them.
Mhm.
So if you sit on those miles for 1, 2, 3, 4, however many years, and then you don't redeem them, think airline cash flow. That cash came in years ago. Yeah, it's like they've already got it. Don't care anymore. We've given you your point, your miles for it, right? Whereas if someone else, John comes in the door and says, "I want to spend $10,000 on a ticket to fly from here to here," it's new money into it's new cash flow, right? So there's like a wider eyes. It's like, well, I'd rather the 10 grand of new money here versus the 10 grand that you made them 3 years ago. So
Mhm.
they're kind of going to be biased towards that. Plus, the logic is, well, he's buying a seat. I need to fill the seat because I'm revenue management. I've got to fill planes, right? The highest possible yield I can do. I've got to. So that checks the box. And revenue management in airline generally has a lot of weight, generally more than loyalty does. So they
Mhm.
kind of they get to veto a lot of stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of one dynamic. The next dynamic is status. Most airlines, you have to fly your way there. You can't just get a crap. I say most, not all. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And if you've got like a top tier status at say like an Air Canada, Delta, United, you're presumably spending what 20, 30, 40, 50. This is real money. Yeah.
Mhm.
At that point, you're in the top 1% of commercial travelers globally. Yeah. So these are good customers. To get to that top tier status, typically you've got to have some business or first class travel. Not there's people that get there and coach, I get it, but most people have the top tier, they're spending, what we call the right type of money. Yeah, it's higher
Mhm.
margin. It's
Mhm.
higher margin. They're booking the flight close to the departure window, so they're booking 3, 4, 5 a week in advance. Because of that, the fares are higher, so they're paying more in a premium. Like they're like your best customer for an airline. Doesn't
Yep.
get any better. That's why they've got top status. Now, if one of these people, if they leave the airline, if they like, screw Delta, I want to go fly United, whatever,
Mhm.
like that's a big hit. So you want to keep these customers. So these customers typically also have more miles. They've almost always got the co-brand card as well. So they've got a ton of miles. They're worth a lot to the airline, both on the credit card side and on the flight side. And it's the right type of money, right? So these are
Mhm.
people the airline wants to look after. So you'll see where the dots are connecting here. Where this is going is people with status are going to start. They're going to have even more access to inventory award seats than people without status, right? So I put a post on LinkedIn the other week where there's a bit of a rant about how I'm top tier with this airline over here, and yet I'm battling for award seats against someone over here who has zero loyalty, 0 miles in their account. They've got, might have a couple million miles sitting in American Express, ready to transfer. Like they could
Mhm.
be quite valuable, but they're not yet. And so I'm battling against that person to try and find the same effing seat, right? Now you got to think
Right.
about from an airline perspective, who would you want to sell the seat to? If you had like one, would you sell it to the guy that's got top status and a bunch of miles, or someone that has shown zero loyalty? This is actually a really interesting question because I'm not sure there's the right answer. I'm
Uh,
really not sure.
I want to interrupt here because I almost want to flip that on its head and say that's a fair question, but that's not a fair expectation when the airlines are the ones that have created both of these monsters. They have created both of these scenarios. You know what I mean? Like they have given me the credit card tools. They have asked me to spend more. So my status is coming through purely credit card spend versus a Mark who's flying. They've also created a Mark. They have created an Anshul. And now I would hate to see an airline decide between these two and say one is better than the other because you've created the game, you've given us the rules, and then you are just, I mean, and this happens more in the hotel industry where if your status is purely based on award nights and points on the back end, and we learned this through Hyatt, on the back end, they were treating you slightly differently than somebody that had just paid and stayed and did all the actual, stays of nights. They were being treated differently at the concierge level. I That's where I sort of it grinds my gears a little bit that you can't just dole out your credit cards to everybody, expect them to pay away, and you give them the perks as well, and then suddenly when they have the same perk as the other individual who's only flying or predominantly flying and getting those true sort of quote unquote true miles and has the quote unquote true status, then you can't distinguish between these two groups and say you are slightly different than the other. Like, you know what I mean?
I get it. I get it. Yeah, I do. Put the lens of airline people think differently. Okay? It's an easy way to explain it.
Sure. And I think the answer to that could just be revenue management. That revenue management just needs their bottom line, and this is where they're deciding that they almost have to quasi create this status light group, which is purely based on credit card spend and not as much flying. Or I feel like as you were talking, I was like, what if airlines just got rid of all of these segment flying and the miles you have to collect to get status and just made it purely based on dollar value? You spend $10,000 on my airline, you get status X. Somebody with a credit card has to spend 10x of that to get that same status. Do you see that happening where it just completely opens the playing field? They don't care about how much you're flying the metal, they just care about how much money you're bringing in directly to them.
Well, so like American Airlines did, right? Their
Yeah.
loyalty.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't think that would work in other markets.
Hmm.
For American, I think it probably on balance makes sense, and it probably worked out pretty well for them. To the point where you can kind of read between the lines and see that they're angling to increase the cost per loyalty point to the banks. That's pretty obvious where that's going.
Mhm.
Which American is basically a marketing company that has an airline side division. So that logic makes sense for them. So you got to remember that each airline has their own thing going on. Yeah, they all might look the same. The loyalty programs might seem the same, but they're actually there's different dynamics in the background, right? Whereas I'm in Asia, there's tons of airlines that are government owned, right? So there's just
Mhm.
a there's a focus on tourism, things like that, bringing people into the country. They see that as more valuable than trying to just squeeze every last dollar out of people on a ticket. And then loyalty, takes a bit of a backseat in a lot of these cases, and it's about what I'll call true loyalty or loyalty, like we like to think it is. Like we like to think it's a two-way street where I give you a little bit of money, you give me a little bit of something else, and then that relationship goes back and forth, and we, at the end of the day, we're all kind of happy. Whereas North America is a little different these days. It's more about what are you willing to do for me, as in you and me as us as flyers. Like, what's the airline willing to do for me, and what am I then going to do for that, right? So, for example, think how many bank points are sitting warehoused in American Express, City, Chase, all these. Think that pool of miles, right?
Mhm.
Some astronomical amount of money is sitting there, right? So if you're an airline guy trying to make money, it's like, how can I get as many of those points from there, draw it down to my airline? That's really the goal, right? How many as many as possible, right? I give you a bonus, I give you status, I get like, what can I give you to do that? So that's kind of where loyalty kind of is playing in the point status game today. It's like, what does it take to get it out of there? Part of that is access to inventory, right? So we're seeing all the, there's tons of these award search flight engines around right now, and that ultimately what they are doing is showing you what is available, what is not. They're all saying, you could transfer so many from Chase to here, and this is how you can kind of do it. Yeah, that's loosely the model there. And the more inventory an airline has, the more they're going to start showing up, right? There's a point where people go, you know what, I've got so many points in my bank. I don't mind paying more than, I'm not like dead set. I have to get this 100,000 mile Eddie had first class redemption. I'm okay to pay a bit more. Like think of it, there's unlimited miles.
Yeah.
There's unlimited miles out there. And if you want that one redemption, you think you're going to get it, and you may well get it. I guarantee you there's 1,000 other people just like you with 10 times more miles sitting in their bank, ready just to blow a lot more on it. So there's the competition of you versus everyone else, all the other 1,000 yous out there. Yeah. But then you got the added layer of actual frequent flyers. They've got access to more inventory and more airlines that are giving them more access to inventory. Plus then unlimited demand from cash, like just paying for a ticket, right? So there's this balancing act where like not everyone can win. You said like there's not ever going to be 300 seats in a flight where everyone can just use points. Plus people can get cheap cash fares. Plus it's not possible to make everyone happy. Right. So I think to your point, you got to play the game, and that game changes over time. Like when I started in all this in 2003, it's vastly different now. The stuff I was learning then, all the secret hints that all the flyer talk meets, don't put this on the board. Don't call the airline. I mean, that's still good advice. Don't call the airline. But all the things back then, they just don't apply today. The way you find seats back then versus now, I get vastly different.
So we've spoken a little bit about what status means to the airline, what status means to the customer, and that push-pull game. And from what I'm gathering, I guess we are all just better off continuing on that hamster wheel of keep getting those miles in, because you just are going to spend more miles for that same seat year over year, and that trend is not going to stop, which is basically what's happened for for a decade at least. That's what's happened. I don't think I've seen anything get better off. It's just gotten worse over time and just more expensive, much like keep coming back to that economics 101. If you're going to print more money and throw it in the market, eventually there'll be inflation because everybody can afford to spend, like you said, a little bit more of whatever money they've accumulated. Let's switch that to status match, and let's bring your company in. Tell us a little bit about. So take us behind that meeting room when you sit down with airline or loyalty program executives or revenue management and discuss. Do you get a sense that they have a good idea of what kind of customer they want, and they have certain goalposts that they're trying to reach through these status match promotions? Because from a consumer's point of view, as fun as it is to be like, hey, I can status match and I can play around a little bit more with this particular airline for, say, 6 months, even if I don't fully intend to spend more money on that airline. I really want to know what the airlines are thinking. How are they defining their goalposts for these promotions? And how are you helping them sort of rationalize all of these sort of nuanced variables around it?
Yeah, good question. So status match as a concept has changed dramatically over the last 10 years. So the typical mindset, let's rewind 10 years ago, yeah? Like how would airlines used to do status matches all the time? As in, send us an email, screenshot of whatever you've got, and we'll give you the equivalent with us, generally for a year. We'll just give you a status straight off the bat. It's free. Here it is. Please fly us. Yeah. It's a bit of a, pray and hope it works out. That still works to a degree. And then what happened is there's a ton of like illegitimate fraud, Photoshop, ton of this sort of stuff coming in. And airlines from about 2006 or 7, I want to say, they tried to move to challenges. So, register for a challenge, do X flights. It might be pro rata. It might just be a couple of sectors, whatever it needs to be. There's some hurdle there. We'll give you temporary status, maybe some hurdle. If you do it, then you get the full thing. Yeah. So the only reason they moved to status is because to challenges because of fraud, right? If you take the fraud part out of it, which we do, suddenly the a full blown 12-month status match actually makes a lot more sense, right? Um, so I'll just kind of put that out there to start. Um, in 2020, we brought in status match application fees for most brands we work with. And this has an even more interesting, where if you pay a fee, it doesn't matter what the fee is. We've seen fees anywhere between 49 and actually there's one airline that even tried a $1,500 fee. that didn't work out. But anyway, between there about $300-400. That's kind of where most sort of sit. You can get understanding. The more airlines charge, the less people do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a sweet spot somewhere between 50 and about $150-200. That's most people are pretty accepting of that. But for that kind of money, they want 12 months of status. They want a good customer experience. They want to be fast. If you've got status somewhere else and you do a match, chances are you're not booking a flight until you see that match hit your account. Until you see your account saying gold or platinum, whatever it is, like you ain't booking a flight. So speed is really a key factor in this, which airlines and hotels have done a pretty terrible job over the last 30 years or so. There was actually, I sent an email to IHG the other day. So I'm Diamond with them, and they've got the Hertz status match, like
Mm-hmm.
the gold, whatever it is. And a couple of months ago, I was in Australia, and I'm at the airport. And I'm like, I wasn't going to rent a car, but I thought I probably should. And so I'm doing this at the airport, right? And there's all the lines through all the counters, all the car rental ones, right? And they all had long lines. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I've lost all my car rental stuff. Like, what do I do? And I'm like, oh, IHG's got a thing, right? I'll try it. So I tried doing it on the spot. I thought, if they upgrade me now, I'll just go straight to the front of the line, right? And so I did the thing I don't know if anyone listening knows how it works with IHG. And I'm still waiting for it. It's 2 months later. It's still like, oh, it's processing. It's coming soon, right? I was a bit optimistic, think I'd get it instantly, but I tried. Speed is a big issue. Speed equals money for an airline, right? There's a direct correlation between how fast the status match hits someone's account and when they start booking, because you're frequent flyers, right? It's not like you're not booking a flight for 2 months. These people generally every month they're doing something.
Are airlines looking for a critical number often through these promotions? Like we are willing to accept, say, I don't know, 1,000 matches to the top tier, 1,000 to the mid tier, 1,000 to the, I'm just playing as an example. Or are they looking at, we don't, no critical number as long as everybody meets the criteria they get in, or is it depending on promotion to promotion?
I'll share a couple of things. So one of the major alliances has restrictions on how status matches can be given out. It's not specifically called out as a status match, but it's people being given status that don't earn it on merit as per the program eligibility. And there is a number, and that number varies by the airline. It's dependent on each airline. So airline A might be able to give out, I'm making the number up, 100,000 matches, whereas an airline B in the same alliance might only be able to give out 100 or 200. Yeah. So the logic behind this is, if let's say someone like American Airlines decided just to flood the market with free platinum for everyone, and they gave out 1 million platinums, right? Because they want to make some money, so they go just hit the market hard on that. And what happens is, big chunk of those people never fly American. They fly British Airways, they fly Iberia, they fly Alaska, they fly Cathay, Japan, Malaysia, they fly someone else. And what happens is it puts all the cost onto their partner airlines. And there's two types. There's one is like a direct cost, and one is like a lost opportunity. So if you then
that's not just cost on partner airlines, that's opportunity as well, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
that partner airline would never have seen this customer though, had it not been for that match.
You can argue both ways on how it works.
Sure,
The
sure.
way we see it pan out is a little different.
Go ahead,
But
complete your thought, and then we want to talk about SAS.
yeah, totally. So you know, think million matches out there, but think like everyone's just like they're reading your blog and they're like, I really want to go to the Cathay Pacific Pier in Hong Kong, right? Suddenly there's 1,000 people trying to get into the lounge,
Right,
which destroys the experience. Suddenly Cathay on every flight, there's 300 Emerald members, right? How do you service that many people? Right? You can't. It's no airline can do this. It's impossible. So there is a limitation like that. I'm not suggesting it's a Cathay limitation or it's a One World limitation, but there
hmm
is one alliance that has these kinds of things. Um, uh, More or less, airlines can do what they want as long as they within the constraints of what they're bound to by the alliances and any other partners that have put restrictions on what they can do. But in saying that, we'll get to the SAS thing now if you want.
Yeah, this is a great segue because just as you were saying, it puts a burden on other partners. I was thinking, oh wait, let's talk about this SAS thing because I sent you a link with the loyalty lobby, and they put out some really cool stats because South Korea, who knew, was topping the list with the number of people that did the challenge and got the 1 million miles. And then one of our Discord members pointed out, "Why are you surprised with South Korea? There's North Korea on that list." Where there's enough people from North Korea that have gotten 1 million miles and have status with SAS. So, to your point, are they now creating a burden for a lot of these Asian airlines who are partners in that SkyTeam alliance, or have they just created a big opportunity for a lot of Asian airlines that would typically not have seen these customers, but now that they have status in SkyTeam, will see them spend some money on these airlines?
So we'll just split this up in two parts. So I
Mhm.
think the article you're referencing is the million miles promotion that they did.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yes,
So there's no status in that. It's just the miles.
that's correct. Yeah, my apologies. Yes, it is just the miles, and then you get to do your. Uh,
I'll talk to both of them because
mhm,
there's 5 or 6 months ago when SAS left Star and joined SkyTeam,
mhm.
there was a bunch of airlines offering an actual status match for alienated SAS Eurobonus members. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we run a bunch of those for airlines. And that's exactly, it works out exactly how you think it is. People that they're so used to one alliance, they're used to SAS and Star Alliance and connecting through Frankfurt to fly Lufthansa or United, this kind of stuff. And we are there's a thing called human foraging behavior where it's basically like we like to do the same thing over and over. We don't like change, especially the older we get, and especially
Mhm,
males. Now, I
mhm.
think older, as in 35-year-old plus males, don't like to change things. The most people that have status with an airline, males over 35. That's just how it pans out. So
Mm.
these people don't want to change. So the idea was, how do we keep them in the alliance? How do we keep them? I say us, I mean the airlines. How do we sort of keep that behavior being consistent so they can keep flying the airlines they know, they like, that kind of thing. So there's a bunch of status match around there, a lot, I will say. So there's that match going on. This million miles thing, super interesting. I don't know about you, but I was following like all the YouTubers and stuff doing like,
Yeah.
they were going, they were
Yeah.
documenting it, and it looked terrible actually. Some of the stuff like, oh, I've got to transfer it through China for the third time, and like this, oh my gosh. I know a heap of people personally that did it, like people that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't think they would do it. Like they were just taking their kids along and just, why not? It's like a fun trip for a couple of weeks.
Out of the 13 people that did it from Canada, there's two or three of us from our community, the Points, Miles, and Bling Discord group. So yeah, we've heard from them as they were doing it, and none of this. A few episodes ago, from one of these streams, I had another person, Andrew, who runs Fly Trippers in Canada. He came and shared his entire experience, and none of it sound appealing to me. To be hopping from one economy flight to the next, to the next, to the next. So but the end result seems so cool that I was like, oh, 1 million miles in your kitty, and that screenshot looks a lot nicer in one go.
Yeah. After I saw some people doing it, it did go through my mind like, shit, people, they get it for like 5 grand or less. Like, that's like you're doing the math and you're like, it's worth it for the miles. Can I take the kids out of school? Like, is it like, I was just going through my mind. Then I'm like, well, you need status to do it. Otherwise, it would really suck for an
Yeah.
economy. And then it's like, well, if you do it in business, you ain't getting it for 5 grand, are you? So is it worth it? Yeah, it's a bit of fun. Anyway, but yeah, very interesting to see the country breakdown. It did
Mm.
remind me. Do you remember years ago, like 15, 20 years, there was that guy, that American dude that employed all these people in Thailand to do. Do you remember
Yeah.
this? They do
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
flights
Yeah.
and
But
he
then
miles.
didn't he get arrested after that? I thought he
The
got busted and then got, or we are thinking of completely two different people.
and he was questioned because they
Okay.
thought he was running like this drug operation between these two cities, and then the not the DEA, but whatever the equivalent was there,
Mm-hmm.
they were like they figured out what he was doing is legit, like not
Mm.
not illegal, and then they wanted in on it as well. And anyway, it reminded me of this because I've heard of a bunch of people that were paid to go around and fly for this SaaS promotion, as in,
Oh,
you're a student, you don't know much to do. Like, hey, I'll give you two
sure.
grand. I'll pay for all your flights, right? Here's
Right.
your itinerary for the next 3 weeks. Just go do all the flights. You get free flights. You got a day in each city.
So
I'll give you,
you
I'll
figure
give you
all the North Korean people in that list are flying for Kim and he's keeping all the million miles? I'm joking.
maybe that's his new thing is they
I'll edit this
miles.
out.
Sass could really ride on that. Leader of North Korea loves Sass so much. He got
Yeah. He got 24 of his own people to go get million miles for him.
But yeah, I'm sure that happened a lot as well. I don't think it's a career thing at all. But that kind of happened. It kind of makes sense. So you got Korean Air is pretty dominant there. So
Mhm.
and then Asiana obviously is
Of
moving
course.
into
Yeah.
Korean, and so those programs will merge as well. Who knows what that will look like for loyalty and the miles there? But um, yeah, super interesting. I think on balance, SAS the media promotion they got out of it
Hmm.
probably outweighs the cost. And then because the cost of issuing, like they're not, if you did the million miles, they ain't making money out of you. Like
No,
guarantee
for
that,
sure. Yeah.
guarantee they're losing. So you've
Yeah.
got the folks at the top, bunch of like YouTubers and stuff promoting the airline. So
Hmm.
like that's actually good. Then you've got a ton of people that probably thought I'll try it, but they never get there. Right. So that group is that's kind of like the iceberg, right? You see that at the top there,
Right.
the people that get a million, and then underneath there's this huge, like they tried it, they couldn't quite get there, that kind of stuff. So
It was also tiered, right? Like the thing was 15 flights and you got the million, but there was a mid tier as well, which was 10 airlines and then something. But yeah, it was tiered. So maybe you're right. Yeah. The stats that we were talking about or we were seeing was only the people that got the million miles and not the probably the large chunk of people that were sitting in that lowest tier or didn't get anything because they sort of semi tried and gave up.
yeah, and typically airlines have to each year have to put some sort of contribution towards promoting the alliance. So you've
Hmm.
seen you've seen like they've all got um some of the libraries have got like Star Alliance or SkyTech, like the paint jobs on the side of the plane.
Yeah.
I think every alliance has like they have to have at least, if you've got, make the number up, if you've got like more than 50 aircraft, for each one in 50 you have to have branding for the alliance on it. I
Right.
don't know the numbers, but that's loosely what it is. And the idea is that as an airline you've got to promote the alliance as well. So this could, I don't know, it could be a bit of, this was SAS's contribution towards that. So they were going to spend the money on something anyway.
Hmm.
Let's do on something that helps our other new partners as well. So
Right.
there could be a bit of that. So overall, I don't think they. Overall, I think it was actually really good for them, probably.
So you're seeing, yeah, and you're right. It is more of a marketing, but budget marketing sort of funnel that they're looking through this promotion at, as opposed to looking for the high value customer that they'll get in that new alliance.
I'm sure they'll get a few people out of it. You know,
Yeah, I mean, now that they
get
have
tried.
these million miles, they'll have to spend it somewhere. Uh,
interesting
Like,
how people redeem it. Yeah.
tell us a little bit about so you mentioned challenges and you mentioned a straight status match. Now that more and more airlines seem to be doing these challenges, is what's the data behind it? Is it showing that they are really funneling through the right kind of match to their customers, or is it purely, like you said, to deter fraud? And then they're like, this is the cost of doing business. So if we have to just give challenges as opposed to doing straight matches, let's just do that.
So yes, this is good. So moving to challenges was about that, and now airlines are looking to go, well, challenge, we if they fly, we get money in the bank, right? Because they've actually got to do something. And then if we look at, say, United, who's changed their challenge this year, where you have to do a flight to activate it. So you
Mhm.
got to do some, I think it's one or two flights, and that activates your challenge. This
I
is
think,
interesting. It's interesting because if you're you don't live in USA and you were trying to scam your way into the United status match, this locks you out of it now because you have to fly a United sector to even kind of start it, right? So if you're
right.
some kid based in or wherever, it's a lot harder now. And even when you do fly, you've shown some government ID, so now it's like the person doing it actually is the person.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not a sold status, effectively. So I understand the logic. That the United scenario and how that they've really locked it down. This really only appeals to one type of customer now. So that this could be deliberate, that they're just very focused on going after people that really want to switch and all their business and really fast and lives in USA. That's more or less the customer they're going to. Whereas um, a more broad status match, like Vietnam Airlines is a good example. Um, they're currently matching anyone that lives in a country where they fly. So they
Right.
they fly they fly to the USA. So people in the US can match. They fly to UK, a lot of European countries, Australia. So I'll match anyone there. And for them, there's a bit of it's brand introduction. It's like, hey, look, we know we're not the number one airline for people in North America to come to Asia for, right? But here's a match. We understand you've got your United American status, Air Canada. We understand you've got that. Don't give it up. Keep it there. Get your match over here. Next time you come to Asia, fly with us. Try it.
Mhm.
Just try it for the first time in your life. You give it a shot. I've got the top tier with them, right? So I know I'm not going to get a terrible experience. I know I'm at least going to get the check in, the lounge, this kind of stuff. So I'm at the same level of benefits that I'm going to get anywhere else. You try Vietnam Airlines, you're like, hey, it's like new aircraft, nice seats. I like the food. I like the staff are friendly. I had a stopover in Ho Chi Minh. Wow, it's actually a pretty cool city. Something you wouldn't otherwise normally explore. So
Mhm.
in that sense, it's brand introduction. It's like just try it. Some airlines not saying Vietnam. Some airlines it's not so much like you keeping the status. Whereas look at United, you can see they want you to keep it.
Mhm.
Again, probably makes sense for what they're doing. For a lot of other airlines, that doesn't make sense. They want you to try it, unhook you from whoever you're currently flying, try this other thing over here, maybe make it a little bit easier for you to keep the status long term. Um, there's especially in markets, we're seeing a trend of airlines a bit more aggressive in markets where they're not in the top three carriers, right? So
Mhm.
if you think like Air Canada in like China or Hong Kong or somewhere, right? What are they like number 10 or something like
Right.
in terms of capacity? So if you live in Hong Kong or Japan or China, you're not thinking I'm going to fly Air Canada, right? You're
Yeah.
thinking who's the local airline? You know them, you see the branding, everyone knows it's the local. It just makes more sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
I might have the credit card with that airline. Like, why the heck would I switch to Air Canada, right?
We are
So
also we are also seeing more and more promotions be very region or country specific, right? You have to be a resident of a specific country. So I can see that it's again playing into that brand recognition for that particular region.
yeah, totally. We do a lot of country resident stuff.
Yeah,
on status match, and that is just it's to pick up the people in the non-home markets. Yeah,
exactly.
think in Canada. Arguably, WestJet and Canada don't need to run status matches for Canadians. They
Hmm.
own the market, or they should, right? So
Yeah.
why bother? It should be the default choice. It's the home market, but that should be the same for every major airline in their own markets too. I'm in Malaysia. Malaysia Airlines should own the market. They do. Yeah. So why run a match here? Vietnam Airlines is not matching people in Vietnam. There is a lot of logic behind this. But then you can be really generous to people that don't live there. So it
Right.
allows you to do that. I mean, we've got a whole system around
There's
EKYC and
yeah,
stuff
there's
like
a
that.
great example of Delta in Seattle. Delta ran an entire promotion, status match promotion for specifically for residents of Oregon and Portland, I think, because they were trying to sort of get that Alaska market, get that who else is up there? Alaska market that they were trying to grab from them. So very specific to the state, let alone the country. Uh, Mark, I'm cognizant of the time. I know we said an hour and we've just burned through it. Do you have a couple of
Yeah, we
minutes?
keep going. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's cool.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's take Mike's question, and that is kind of left field, but he's asking, Mark, if status holders are 5% of travelers, what percent of travelers do you think uh, are top status on all three major alliances? So yeah, he's basically asking, what is the percentage of the top status holders across alliances? Is it like a large number? Is one alliance heavily bloated than the other? Like, what's your sense?
So I mean, if I think about who might have top status on all three alliances at the same time, if it's legitimately earned, a very small number, I will
Yeah.
guess.
I mean, across the board, three alliances, that's going to be a very, very small number.
I mean, to be fair, I have status on all three alliances and some more. Some of those are not earned. Um, but
As does Mike, I think, which is why he's asking. He wants to do a Mike, is it a humble brag? I think you have status. I mean, the British Airways one was very similar to what you were saying. I think earlier in 2024, they did a status match where you had to fly one flight across the Atlantic, return or two one ways. So that was like a nice little hook because they were targeting a region to get that status sort of coupled.
yeah, we're seeing a bunch of this regional stuff come out.
Hmm.
I'm not sure how that really worked out for BA in the end because it was pretty generous. They front loaded
Wow.
6 months of status, and then it was a really high bar for like you had to do it was a translated business class, right? So it was a pretty high bar. You ain't keeping that for less than what $3,000, whatever whatever the cheapest kind of fare is. Not sure that
Hmm.
worked out for them. I'm sure American Airlines loved it.
Well, BA undid a lot of their customers that they may have gained. They're losing a lot now since the announcement of those changes.
So since I announced that, two airlines came out status matches. There was
Yeah,
Virgin Atlantic doing a match challenge with a bonus on top of it, and Flying Blues, Air France KLM,
Flying Blue. Yeah, yeah,
pretty aggressive on that as well.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's other airlines that are launching something as well. So if you've got BA status, I think it's a good time to be alive. You've got a lot of options coming. And there'll be even more. BA is obviously backtrack, or not really. They put bonuses effectively on.
Exactly, a little bit of backtracking, but not true backtracking. Uh, can we let's just completely switch gears now and talk a little bit about this entire idea of being a free agent and how that works in this space of or an ecosystem where airlines are trying to win your wallet over, you are trying to squeeze as many perks out of the airlines without spending as much money. And then there's an entire group of people that often talk about being a free agent and just going to an airline that just treats them the best. And you have had some incredible stories on LinkedIn because I've kind of followed your work there. With certain airlines, I mean, Emirates particularly, that have very specific touch points in your experiences that almost feels like if you were a free agent, that's the kind of airline you want to go to, which sort of have these softer touch points, regardless of your loyalty to them or not, or status with them or not. If you're willing to pay for a premium experience, they'll treat you well.
Yeah, this comes to the argument of should you really chase status or not, or should if
Yeah.
you status just a byproduct of what you normally do.
Right.
I'm 100%. I have done mileage runs my whole life, so I've chased this quite a lot. So I get that angle. I've done was once I did like almost a week of solid flying every day of status runs just to get fucking status. And it was a lot of fun, I admit. Not the best use of funds, but pretty fun. A lot of cool stories. That's all that really matters, right? Cool story.
Exactly.
Um, so there's that. So should people be free agents? It depends. I think if you don't have the ability to get, like, let's say the mid tier at an airline and status, then it may make sense, because the mid tier, especially with the alliances, that's when things like lounge kick in, and
Hmm.
that's kind of where people want to aim at. If you can't get there, it may make sense just to kind of play the market a bit. You're collecting points everywhere anyway. Do you care about status? If like you're always in business or first class, or your company's paying for it, arguably you don't care. If you're
Hmm.
like if you're in business class, I'm thinking like a big international airline here, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're in business, the only benefit you get of status is you're going to earn a few more miles, or if you've got the top tier, maybe access to a first class lounge,
Correct.
depending on the like. Realistically, they're the biggest benefits. And um, if
And
you fly a lot, you're going to get that first class lounge is really fun for a while, and then you get a bit jaded, and it's like, well, I don't. I don't go into the lounge a lot of times. I just go straight to the gate. Just don't
same,
care.
yeah. Yeah. Especially at home. I just often don't care if it's like a Canadian lounge or if it's here in Ottawa. Who cares? I just go straight to the gate and it's just easy in and out. Layovers are the only times I would care for any kind of lounge. And we exactly what you said. We talk about this in this points community as well, is because oftentimes this points community is so driven on points and high value sort of proposition, which is flying in business, flying in first all the time. It often makes me wonder, why should this group even worry about status to begin with? Now, off late, we are seeing small or incremental changes in which airlines are trying to make things a little bit cheaper on points for people with status, a little bit easier for you to access certain kind of availability. Customer service is slightly different. If something goes wrong, for example, trying to call a concierge line is a lot easier as a top tier status versus somebody that doesn't have status.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to your point, there are groups of people, if you're able to get yourself directly into business or first to begin with, and that's all you do, that's all you fly for, I I really struggle to find a good reason for status. Do you think there's other elements of status that airlines can really hook on to stop this free agent kind of behavior that often people get into?
The way most loyalty programs are structured, they're designed for people to keep them around, keep them sticky. So
Hmm.
the, yes, there's things airlines could do to kind of make it more sticky, but there's a time effort kind of thing in there, right? The loyalty program is never going to be for everyone. If it's for most people and most of the people they want to engage with it, they kind of squint your eyes a bit. Does it look right? Yeah. It's, it's
Hmm.
it's good enough for 80% of the people. That's the bulk of it. To get from the 80% share wallet to the 90, like the cost to get there might be so high, it's just not worth it for it. Like, let's just put the money somewhere else. So
Right.
even though you and me and everyone, we look at it and go, well, they could just do this, and that would get these other people. It just may not be economically viable to do
Hmm.
that kind of thing. I saw this post on LinkedIn a few days ago. This lady in Australia, she said she was doing 175 flights a year. Do you see this one? And she's like,
No.
I don't have status anywhere. I don't see the value in it. And I said, well, you're either flying on staff tickets all the time and not earning it, or on
Oh,
flight
yes, I saw this. Yes, I saw this. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, hang on. Otherwise, like, if you're not on flying on miles or staff tickets, there's no way you're doing that many sectors. This is in Australia, right? And you're not just organically earning status as part of it.
Mhm.
Something's a bit off there, but give it the benefit of the doubt. Um, there are some people where just status makes no sense. You wouldn't, if you would come into it naturally, you just do it, right? But
Correct.
would you strive like? if you're not flying and you're like, you do one flight a year to visit your friend in wherever, you wouldn't try and get status. Like, it just doesn't make sense. You may as well fly whoever. I'm a big fan of just fly who treats you the best. I'm a big fan of this. But I fly enough where I will earn status anyway. So there's a dual thing there.
Mhm.
For me on my long haul flights, obviously I visit a lot of airlines. I business travel. Emirates for me makes a lot of sense just because they take me everywhere I need to go, right? Whereas, if you live in Ottawa and you don't have big international travel all the time, Emirates makes no effing sense at all for you, right?
Right.
So there's things like this to keep in mind.
So that
So
that example that you gave of the person, the Australian girl that was talking about 175 flights, actually, before I have the flip of that was happening on LinkedIn. I want to read that out to you, exactly what we were talking about. But before that, Greg said, "I don't believe status is as valuable anymore. I get perks with my paid and award business class tickets. The earnings now come from credit card, not elite bonus points. To me, status just gets me better phone line." And to counter that, Mike, who we know is Air Canada Super Elite and all of that, says concierge service, free award cancellation, discounts. There are some nuanced benefits over and above the business and first class ticket, which, yeah, hard to argue that. Um, and then, yeah, Greg says, I agree, but if you pay out of your own pocket, okay. And I want you to react on this, Mark, and just going exactly to what we are saying. So this is a gentleman by the name of Swaney, and he says, declaring freedom from frequent flyer hostage programs. For the past 35 years, I've been a slave to frequent flyer programs in airline travel. I diligently racked up enough dollars and qualifying points to get the coveted 1K on United and executive platinum on American, even if this meant buying more expensive tickets or foregoing nonstop flights because I needed miles and points. I've accumulated blah, blah, blah. Let me explain. He says, goes on to explain everything that he's done and how, the programs haven't treated him really well. The key here, what he's saying is he's earned a lifetime status. So now he's willing to go free agent. Well, not really free agent because he has that big thing to fall back on. But what's your sense of this kind of a commentary, which is I've spent so much money over a lifetime of flying and traveling. And even if that person feels just as disenfranchised as me sitting in Ottawa, who maybe travels 5, 6 times a year, what are airlines doing wrong? And are there examples of airlines that are doing loyalty program and status well enough that you're like, you know what, rather go with them? You mentioned Emirates, but to give me a bit of your immediate reaction to this kind of storytelling.
okay, I'm going to say something that's going to hurt a lot of people. Brace yourself, blame suits on. Most people shit talk status when they're on the way down. They're about to lose it or they just lost it. And they're like, well, I don't need, like, their rationale in their mind, they're justifying why it's okay for them to lose it. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing because I do exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
That's generally when most people are saying bad things about statuses. And this guy on LinkedIn, he says, had 35 years of this. That's a long time of status. You can't keep status forever. Like, get over that bit, right? Um, Eventually everyone loses it. And then
Mhm.
when that happens, we're all a bit emotionally attached to our status. I was talking to an airline executive yesterday and I said, just to highlight like the value of status versus points. I said, think about when you meet someone as an airline executive at a function or whenever. They say, hi, my name's John. The first thing they say is, I'm a platinum member. I'm a gold member. They don't say, hi, I'm John. I've got 150,000 miles with you. They say, hi, I'm
Hmm.
platinum. It's because most of us, we associate the status we have, if we have status the airline, that's the brand, that's how we relate to the airline. Therefore, in our mind, it's our emotional connection to the status. That is the airline. Yeah. So hence, when we lose it, we feel it more. Yeah. And we want
Mhm.
to pacify ourselves and make ourselves feel okay about why we're not going to have it anymore. I've done myself plenty of times exactly the same thing. So I get it. Hence it's a bit painful to hear for the first time, like, that not ever, most of the time, most people when they're shit talk, that's why. um I'll talk about this lifetime thing for a second.
Yeah.
because this definitely does make you a free agent. I hit lifetime gold on Qantas, like sapphire. Lifetime got on Qantas when I was 30, and
Hmm.
when that happened, I was a super top tier with them, and obviously you drop down over the years, and then I dropped down. So now I'm on my lifetime status with Qantas now, and since then, last I don't know 10 years, I've probably done 5 or 6 flights with Qantas, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
What's the point? I don't need. Why try? I've got this thing forever, right? I don't need to bother. To be fair, I don't live in Australia, so it's a bit harder to even do stuff. Um, and it does take those golden handcuffs off. You're like, wow, like the what you liberate a bit more. I don't
Hmm.
have to fly them now. I can do whatever I want because even if I'm totally disloyal to my airline I got lifetime with, I've still got it forever. Now I think this is where airlines have kind of messed up a bit. I like what Alaska's done, by the way, with their lifetime status. So, and this, if airlines all just did this, this would fix the problem. And that's when you've got lifetime status, every most airlines, except Alaska, most airlines you drop to zero every year. So your qualifying miles or your status
Hmm.
tiers like that goes to zero. So zero, here's where you're at, but you've got gold, for example. So you got here. So between here and here, the earning that you do is entirely wasted because you're gonna
Correct.
keep this anyway. So all airlines need to do, and what Alaska did, they just brought you up to here to start. So
Hmm.
every year, it's now a benefit of lifetime stat. You're now starting from here every year. That way, you've got real incentive to go from here. It's basically like a shortcut to the next tier up.
Yeah.
But to even get there, you have to have shown. Well, yeah, let's face it, you got to spend a lot of money to get there. So
Yeah.
you've kind of you've done your part by loyalty, lot spent over time. And what they're saying now is now you've effectively got like a double qualifying miles promotion for life. That's
Yeah.
kind of how it sort of works out. I,
I
I
mean,
like
the
that.
the concept of that rollover qualification miles is exactly the same as well. I mean, not exactly the same, is similar in that if you've gone over the requirement by, say, 20,000, 30,000, they'll let you keep that in the next year's pool so that you don't start at zero. You start at that 20,000, 30,000, whatever you're rolling over, which is what a lot of people here in this points community are doing with, say, something like an Air Canada that allows that rollover benefit.
I think it's a great idea. Really
Yeah.
good idea. There's,
Yeah.
there's always going to be one time, if you're a frequent traveler, every so often you're going to have a really big year, right?
Hmm.
Or like me, probably a lot of people here, you sort of hit the super elite 100K, your executive, whatever it is. And then it's like, I'll just relax now. Like, I can't possibly earn status anywhere else. It's November. Like, I'll just chill. I'll start using my miles now because I don't need to worry about the spend. You just foot off the gas a bit. Whereas if there's a rollover or something like that, it's like, well, I'll just keep going because it's gonna set me up for next year.
Exactly.
Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of logic there. I think see a lot of these, especially airlines, the programs were designed 3 decades ago, kind of thing, and the structure is more. Things have changed, but more or less, it's the same kind of idea. Obviously, I'm in Asia, so here I've got Malaysia Airlines, got Singapore Airlines next door to me, and Thai Airways. The three airlines, they actually used to be all buddies years ago. They
Okay.
used to actually be one big program. Um, and Cathay was part of it as well. This is before the alliances, right? This is the
Hmm.
90s. And all of them, the structure of them was all exactly the same. And even today, they're more or less the same. They all have 3 year miles expiry. So after 3 years, no matter what you do, unless you've got that super, super top tier, your miles are going to expire. So
Right.
like me, Singapore Gold member, which is their mid tier, my miles expire every 3 years. So my personal strategy with actually this is real. Last week I burned my remaining 100,000 miles because they were going to expire soon. I just burned it on again. Don't scold me here on a cash plus
Toaster.
miles.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a toaster or something.
No, I did redeem for some candles a few years ago, and that was a terrible redemption. But it is better than nothing, though. So you
Yeah.
may as well get something. And
Oh, for
anyway,
sure.
I did cash plus miles slider for wait for it for economy class. Well, it's to Singapore, so it's only an hour flight. It's for the family, right? Yeah, and I burned on that. Just it's either that or lose them. So
The-
my point is programs were designed 30 years ago. A lot hasn't changed. And
right.
so some of these programs here, they'll see points expiry as a good thing for the like a really good thing for the airline. Whereas North America, it's generally seen as a bad thing, hence the unlimited, no expiry, this kind of stuff.
Is North American loyalty program game far more evolved than the rest of the world, or is it just different? So I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about the trends. Is the psyche of membership different or psyche of loyalty programs different in that part of the world because it's up and coming as opposed to sort of a little more mature or quote unquote evolved market like North America?
So blanket Asia, think of
Hmm.
it more as recognition program
Okay.
with
What do you
all
mean?
as it's like deep down in our hearts, like what do you think loyalty should be?
Yeah.
That's what
Okay.
it is. That's
Right.
basically the logic there. USA, let's face it, is driven by credit cards and banks. If
Hmm.
you take the co-brand credit cards out of the USA programs, they fall over straight away, like
Mm.
100%. You take credit cards out of some of these Asian programs, they're perfectly fine. So like you
Mm.
keep that in mind. But saying that, if I'm running United American Delta's program, I'd do exactly the same thing they're doing now. Like you
Right.
wouldn't. It's just the position they're in. You may as well make the most of it. If I
Hmm.
look at like which programs are most innovative around the world, right? Which are
Yeah.
doing the most cool stuff, right?
Hmm.
There's two that stand out in my mind. I think Air Canada is innovative.
Hmm.
There's enough new
Yeah.
stuff that's kind of happening all the time. There's reasons behind that, and then Flying Blue, Air France KLM.
Yeah.
I think they're sort of moving in the right direction to a lot of cool stuff. And you gotta love this. If I try to boil down, like, what's the common thing between these two programs? Like, why are they innovative and that like BA is not, for example, right? It's not like they've all got smart people. They've all flown planes. They've all got business class. They've all got lounges. Like, what is the real difference? I think it comes down to the people running the program. Um, Look at Air Canada, folks at the top there. There's a lot of people that really, really get loyalty. They're
Hmm.
actual frequent flyers. They actually have status that they actually earn with airlines. Yeah. So think like your Mark Nassers, your Scott O'Leary, these kind of. I think
Hmm.
those guys,
Hmm.
they super smart. Plus they get it. Plus they're actual frequent flyers, right? Look at Flying Blue. You got our friend Mr. Lipsy running it
Ben.
there, ex
Yep.
Air Canada
Ex Air
as well,
Canada. Yeah.
and he's a total loyalty nerd as well. He's an airline. He's got status with many places.
Hmm.
Um, he's done a status match as well, so he gets it. We obviously run status match with Flying Blue as well. So you've got kind of these people. I remember when I was at Malaysian, I was there trying to solve my own problems as a frequent flyer. I'm like, I live here. I've got status that I own legitimately. Like if I solve it for me, I solve it for millions of other people, right? As long as the airline
Right.
still wins ultimately, because that's your employer, right? As long as they win, it should all work out. Um, so it's I that's kind of how I see it. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of other really smart people running loyalty
Hmm.
and airlines and hotels around the world. It's very bureaucratic. There's a lot of red tape in these places, so sometimes it's really hard to get stuff across the line. That's where when I talk to airlines, I kind of help them bridge that gap. Like I get that there's issues there, but I also see this opportunity. And we have people contact emailing us all sorts of time. Hey, I've got status with this. Can I do this over here? I'd really and you see what they're saying, and it makes a lot of sense. Like I get the story, and if I'm that airline, I would want your business because I'm moving to Berlin, and I want to stay in the alliance. I'm United 1K. Can you get me the equivalent with Lufthansa, right?
Hmm.
And the proper answer is no, because alliances can't match each other. Well, they're not allowed to poach customers in the same. They can, but
Technically, yeah.
they're not supposed to. It's not poaching if you go ask for it, right? So in theory, it's like a no, but you can see the logic and you can see how it would benefit everyone by doing this. So there's stuff like that. We help airlines kind of see the light on a lot of these things because they're busy, they're doing their thing, they're running an airline. We just try. in a lot of ways, I advocate for frequent flyers. I kind of speak the language of airline and say, like, here's some options of things we see going on. Here's what you could do that would make sense internally for them, in how stuff might work. So I'm just a giant advocate for frequent flyers at this stage. That's kind of how we
Mhm.
started this, and that's why it's been pretty successful on our business so far. Start as much as one of 4 products we've got. The other stuff is sort of, we're just known for status match. So we're out there just trying to create stuff. I'm exactly like everyone listening here. I'm just a
Yeah.
frequent flyer, just trying to earn miles and get my way
Um,
through the world.
my outlook, just because my mom and dad still live in India, so I visit India pretty much a couple of times a year, and then other friends that keep going to say China. So India, China, the two big countries, populous countries. I have a feeling, I mean, loyalty programs like airline loyalty programs particularly barely tap into maybe 5% of that market, maybe. And I'm talking about programs even within those countries, say an Air India or Air China or whoever the case might be. I think in the next 15, 20 years, as that middle class population in both of these countries grow, become more sort of rich, and credit card sort of acceptance that changes in the market, which we are already seeing it change, I think loyalty program will have a whole new meaning once that Asia, like you said, all of Asia rises up to that level of loyalty program game that we just haven't seen yet. Anybody else do as US does. So I think it's just about time. So in your mind, is there an Asian program that you're like, hey, watch out for them? Because I mean, Chris Flower does decently, but are there programs that you're like, this program has a lot of potential for folks that live in Asia, or even folks that are here in North America? You're like, you should pay attention to that particular loyalty program in Asia.
Yeah, there's no secret hack here, by the way. but but Singapore Airlines does have a lot going for it. Um, I'm a member there. I've got status. I've got miles there. It's far from perfect though. There's a lot of downsides. It's not the poster child for the best loyalty program in Asia.
Hmm.
Good airline, but loyalty is questionable in some areas there. Um, the reason it works for them is because they list a lot of inventory for seats on their site. Now, there's a reason behind that. In most alliances, when the airline is above a certain size, they have to integrate with other airlines.
Yeah.
So the smaller the airline, the less integration they have to do with other, as in the more less inventory they have to show on the website. So they
Hmm.
might have access to it. You might call, like, think like Sri Lanka Airlines or something, a really small airline. You call them up, you say, I want a seat on American. Like, they could probably do it for you, but it's a hassle. It's a phone call.
Hmm.
How are you getting your Sri Lankan miles? Like, that's the next question, right? Um, so that's why Singapore works, because it's a big enough airline where they have to do some of these things. Hence, they've got all these integrations. Typically, the bigger the airline, the more access to inventory they have to show on their own website.
Hmm.
Also means the more buying power they have from other airlines, because these tickets are bought and sold between airlines internally. Yeah, they got different rates, different stuff going on. That's why this Air Canada dynamic redemption you mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
that's why it's actually kind of interesting, because you can see, just by you telling me, I can tell my brain here, like they've done deals with other airlines to make
Yeah.
this work.
Yeah,
It's a
like
big.
that the fact that United is on that dynamic scale just basically says that they've done the deals in a way that they're able to then produce more United inventory on Air Canada, but at a much higher rate, which is exactly what they've done with Emirates, for example, because they had a separate chart for Emirates, which were much higher in terms of redemption pricing. So they're doing something similar with United, which kind of makes sense to me,
Which is
given
smart,
their
which is actually smart, because they
yeah.
kind of, like, they're super smart people there. Like, they're doing
Mhm.
this for a reason. It's very deliberate. They Not every mile that's created is of the same value. So when you fly, those miles that are created from that, typically they're the lowest value. But there's an airfare they get on the back of that. So it's, then there's miles you earn from a bank, promotional miles versus like earned miles. Like
Mhm.
there's generally different rates there. You earn some miles through Hertz, Avis, whatever, they go into the airline. Again, they're at a different rate. So they're all different rates. And sometimes it can make sense for airlines to kind of revenue management their own award inventory. So if you use some miles to redeem on, you know, your airplane miles on a United ticket, there could be a scenario where Air Canada is losing money on that redemption. So they're paying, I'm making the number up, they're paying United $200 for that ticket. Um, but they've made $100 out of you from that.
Yeah.
Like there could be scenarios where they actually lose money because they look at, again, this is probably the number one metric most airlines look at is lifetime value of a customer. So when I say lifetime, I mean that's over the next 30 years, right? And they look at where in that cycle you are, how much flying you're doing, age comes into this, where you live, socioeconomic factors. So, if you're a, late 20s, early 30s kind of person, they see that you've got a
Long way to
life
go.
ahead
Yeah.
of you still. Yeah. That, especially if you live in one of their hubs, it's like, well, this person's, just beginning their journey. We can do a little bit more for them. So that's why I think the airplane thing is pretty interesting there, because you can see without looking at the details, I can tell in the background, there's some interesting deals that would have been done there to even get that. And which may not look like it now, but this probably will benefit elites, airplane elites, because you think about it,
are people flush with points?
Yeah, there'll be a
Because
point where
the other thing, to their credit, the other thing that they have done really well in Canada and North America in general is they've made earning those miles or points so easy that you can really garner those points if you do certain things and you're like plugged into that ecosystem, you can really generate those points easily. So
if you fly them, if you've got status like 50K or higher,
yeah.
like you're putting real money into the airline as well. And if you sort of combine those two, like your value is more than just a center point at that point. It's like, well, this guy's spending 10 grand a year as well. They're going to want to do more for you. So they can kind of lose a little bit over here to make even more over here. And that's what most airlines don't do. They just try and make as much as they can on both hands. It's
fair.
Yeah.
Look, Mark, you've been so generous. One last question. Take a minute and tell me this. And this is just a personal curiosity. Status with an airline like Emirates or status with a big airline in an alliance? Which one would you lean towards and why?
I can answer both here because I've got both.
Sure.
I'm platinum with Emirates. That's the top tier with Emirates. It's 150,000 miles to get. It's pretty high for a platinum top tier. It just makes sense to me because I do the international flights, the long haul stuff, premium cabin. I kind of float into it naturally. Emirates have treated me insanely well as part of that. We do work with them, but those two are not related. You mentioned earlier the LinkedIn post I had about that. When I earned platinum with them, I timed this right. So there's this one flight I knew after it, like that would be the flight that I got across the line for platinum status. And as we landed, we're sort of taxiing, seatbelt sign was just turned off. Manager runs down the aisle, and actually, can I show you it here? I got it right next to me. Comes down the aisle and shows me this. You can kind of
wow. Yeah.
It's a little box. It's like just a platinum welcome kit. It was a more elaborate casing at the time, and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Ross-Smith. You've just hit platinum status." And I'm like, "How the f did you know this?" Because that was the flight that got me across the line.
It's called data breach, Mark.
Totally, pretty cool though. And I'm like, "Wow, I knew it, you knew it. Like the logistics of doing this, like they had to, figure some magic out." That was really cool. They've treated me really. I've had I only earned this like 4 months ago. I've had a heap of upgrades since then. They treat me really, really well. So there's kind of, for me in that, I see a lot of value. I got status with other airlines as well, with alliances, and obviously I've got lifetime with with One World stuff. that obviously opens up more access to, like one month, like 13, 14 airlines now. So there's a bit of continuity of care, of benefits across the alliance that can make a lot more sense. I think really the answer comes down to who you are and what your travel looks like. If you're
Hmm.
mostly domestic kind of person, it actually may well make sense just to try and buy Spirit and Frontier. Like it may well actually make a lot of sense.
Good
Um,
Lord. Let's not close out on that statement. Let's go a little bit more.
I can't play Frontier status match right now.
Hey, speaking of not plugging Status Match, but can I just submit a profile of what I want on Status Match, or do I have to wait for a promotion to come through? Because I noticed on the website says join the waitlist. Like, what kind of waitlist am I joining, and what can you explain what's happening there, what the flow is?
Yeah, we're actually kind of redeveloping. So there's statusmatch.com, and then there's stuff we can do with brands, and they're generally on its own site.
Right.
Uh, the best, if you're looking for like the best thing, join statusmatch.com. It's free. Just punch in the details there. You don't have
Hmm.
that. You can tell us what programs you've got. You don't have to. There are wait lists. You can sort of, hey, I'm interested in Oman Air, like whatever, right? Like we've
Hmm.
got
Hmm.
every brand on there. We use those numbers in aggregate. So we'll go to a brand and say, hey, look, there's 2,000 people here that are interested. This is where they're from. This is the bit of the pro. We don't say this, it's John from,
Hmm.
we go
Hmm.
into that. Some brands go, it's kind of cool, not interested, but kind of cool. Some are like, wow, we really need help from people that live in Portugal. Like how do we get more of those? And so that opens a conversation, and then that can lead to actually doing something. So it's kind of a way for us to
Yeah, okay.
wedge in and sort of unlock the blinkers that airline people have on sometimes. It's like
Hmm.
there is a real demand for matching. We've got many hundreds of thousands of people waitlisted to stuff, and we can't possibly do everything. But we try to as much as we can. If we see opportunities, we'll proactively go to airlines and say, hey, have you thought about this? Here's how this works. We've got these number of people that might qualify for it. That's kind of some of how we approach it. But generally, if you just join, it's free to join. Just basically just get your email in there. As soon as something comes out, we send, if you're registered in the country that would qualify for it, we'll send you something out and just say, hey, there's this new thing there. Otherwise, I mean, obviously, I know you cover a bunch of status matches that come up as well. So,
Hmm.
we're pretty good friends with, a lot of the media and bloggers and stuff. So we try to get the
Right.
word out there. And, it, the more people that do matches, the more that actually will happen. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that's
Makes
bad, but
sense.
like we try and encourage everyone to do everything.
So basically, everybody go and basically ask for an Emirates status match to happen soon.
Yeah. Or if everyone just started emailing an airline we don't work with, then the airline gets so annoyed at getting emails like, how can we solve this problem? Oh, these status match guys can do it. No, I kid, but matching can make a lot of sense if you're really annoyed with your airline or you really want to change. The grass is not always green on the other side, but it doesn't hurt to try. It's not like you're leaving your wife. Kind of, it's a company, It's like
You
you're just
know,
trying something else.
in a scenario like Canada, where two airlines are so dominant, and particularly depending on which part of Canada you're in, you are basically like in that relationship with your wife with this airline. And there's not much you can do beyond them. No matter how hard you try, you really have to break the shackles. And I mean, this points community is very savvy, so they'll do all kinds of different things. But I'm talking about your typical Canadian traveler. For good or bad, we are all locked into either Air Canada, mostly Air Canada, or WestJet, depending on what part of Canada you're in. Just because, like you said, like if like being in Ottawa, or think Ottawa is like, I consider Ottawa as a tier two city. Think about a smaller town, smaller city, Canada, where Air Canada is the only option and there is nothing else. Like, who else are you going to be loyal to? And that's where I really find that this concept of loyalty just blurs, because it's not loyalty at that point, it's dependency, because there is no other option. But
True. I mean, it's got to go through your mind at some point. Do I stay in my little town or do I Do I like paying? How much tax you guys pay again in Canada? Just remind me.
Well, it's not a flat rate anyways, but yeah, it goes upwards of 40%.
Exactly. There's a lot of other countries out there but a lot less tax. So just putting that out there. I hear Emirates is
Okay.
good.
Yeah, true. Everybody moved to Dubai.
Yeah.
Right,
Cool.
Mark, thank you. Thank you so much. You've been more than generous with this group, with our questions and curious, our curiosity in general. So I'm just happy that you were able to peel away at a few of these things, take us behind the curtain, so to speak, and tell us how airlines are thinking about us as high value customers. Mark, thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I'm sure we'll link in soon on socials or otherwise. Very interesting, as Sarah says. Yes.
Thanks. No, it was a fun chat.
Yeah.
I love this stuff as you point out. So please follow me. I'm pretty active on these places, and if I can help, please reach out.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Mark. Take care.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Bye. Thanks, everybody. Take care and good night.